This is part 2 of the Mailbag video containing some exciting stuff from China and also from viewers. If you are in a hurry, as usual, you will find direct links in the description. Like that, you can skip the uninteresting parts of the video. Grüezi YouTubers, here is the guy with a Swiss accent, with a new episode and fresh ideas around sensors and microcontrollers. Remember, if you subscribe, you will always sit in the first row. The next 3 things come together, and some people might recognize them. They belong to this project here. This is my Zigbee box with this IKEA stuff, the Philips stuff and so on. And in the meantime I got also a router boards here, small router boards, and also got these modules here for do-it-yourself Zigbee stuff. And now I got a magic whatever. Let's open it. Oh, no idea what this is. It has a Zigbee module inside and an accelerometer, and it can detect how you place this. So for example, you could say, okay, this side up means light on, and this is light off, and maybe this is louder and this is less loud, and whatever. I do not exactly know how I will use that, but I think this is an innovative design, and it might spark some ideas. Maybe you have seen an interesting project for this magic cube, and otherwise I will search for it. But first I have to connect it to my Zigbee network. And as you know, I plan a mesh video with all the Zigbee devices, and this is why I also have a PIR sensor here and a temperature and humidity sensor, a second one, so I can check which devices act as routers and which act as end nodes, and so on and so on, and also how fast a network is built. They come into the same box, and as you might know from other videos, I organize my lab in boxes for projects. I ask myself why the hell they included this piece of metal, but now I think I know it. It is to open this compartment here. A battery 2450, a link button as expected, and it's already live. So the battery is probably no more completely fresh, but anyway, it should last for years as far as I know, because this CR2450 is quite a large battery. The manual, by the way, is not extremely helpful. It's on both sides, it's in Chinese. But I found a manual, an English manual online. So this is the Magic Cube, $14. Not cheap, but for an innovative design, maybe okay. And here is the PIR sensor. One is also $15. The interesting thing is for me that it does not need any power, so I can place it very independently. And the third one is, this is a vibration sensor and a shock sensor for alarms. I didn't remember this one. I thought it's a temperature sensor, but it is a shock sensor, and it is also around $14. So we will see how this network will work when I build it. The next one is also from Xiaomi. It is a very small Bluetooth loudspeaker with a battery in it, and my idea was initially to use this for all my Raspberry Pis, because sometimes I want to have some sound with the Raspberries, and I thought this is a good idea that I can just couple them because the newer Raspberries all have Bluetooth. But unfortunately, you can look yourself or listen yourself how badly this works on even a Raspberry 4 with a Buster. I tried it also with a Raspberry 3B Plus and Stretch with the same effect.
Oh, if only I could do it, I'd come and get you.
And it's not the loudspeaker, it's definitely the Raspberry Pi. It also reacts very slowly, so this Bluetooth stuff seems to need a lot of resources somehow. I don't know exactly what happens. But if I couple it with my iPhone,
and I wish that I could put it to machine, 'cause time moves on.
this has quite a good sound quality. Of course, it's only small, but to use it for tests and so on would be perfect. Because this did not work, I tried a different thing. This is a Jabra device I use for telephone conferences and Skype and so on for my business. And this has a USB connector. And I tried this also with the Raspberry Pi. And this works fine. But of course, not out of the box. You have to go into the bowels of Linux as usual and change 2 parameters. But then it works. So this is also an alternative that I have now a USB device, and I will buy a small USB loudspeaker for that purpose to connect it to whatever Raspberries I want. And because I know now which file I have to edit, I can also change this quite fast. You find a link in the description if you want to use a USB loudspeaker on your Raspberry Pi. Here is the listing of this loudspeaker, and it is the standard one is 1172, free shipping to Switzerland. The next one is a very simple device, and when I drove to the Black Sea, I saw in restaurants that they use these kind of devices or similar ones, and this is a panic button which can be used, for example, for elderly people. And the advantage of this button is it is very simple and it is on 433 megahertz and not on Bluetooth or Zigbee or whatever. So the range is quite long of this device, and the battery lasts forever because it only switches on if you really press the button here. So a nice addition if you have anyway already 433 devices in your house, then you just connect it to your infrastructure. The listing is here. It's also not very expensive compared to, for example, Zigbee stuff and so on. You can use this in different situations. For example, you can also use it as a doorbell or something like that. And by the way, in the restaurants, this is used to call the waiter. Now you get a blast from the past. This project box contains a few things already, not everything needed, but this is a project which is for the elderlies something to remember, and for the young guys something to see how we worked in the 80s and so on. And this integrated circuits here are very special compared to what we have today. You can have a look in the inside of this case and you see the chip here. But why the hell is this open and you can have a look in it? It is a EEPROM, a storage which can be erased by applying ultraviolet light. Now the ultraviolet light source is not here already, it's still somewhere between China and Switzerland, but it will get here. But what got already here is the universal programmer. It is a TL866 II Plus, a very nice device. It can program hundreds, if not thousands of different devices, and especially these old EEPROMs and stuff like that. So you erase one of those, plug it in here, and reprogram it again. And this is a cycle we did hundreds and hundreds of times, and you will see it took quite a long time. This is probably why all of us are addicted to coffee, because there we started with coffee drinking, waiting to erase these devices. No, not really. You always had a few of them sitting around because they were not cheap back then. And here also, I am not sure if these are really new chips, because this was a batch, 5 pieces together, and they look all a little bit different. They seem to have different speeds and stuff like that. So maybe they are also from different stocks somewhere in a basement or wherever they found it. So I'm glad that they have it here. So these are the EEPROMs, and let's start with this one here. Here we have chips from Japan. Those were the days when chips were made in Japan, and it is an 8085, which is a processor. The predecessor was the 8080, which was probably one of the first microprocessors commercially available. I know there were a few more, but the 8080 was one with the 6502, which was quite famous. I will use this because it is a little bit more integrated, a little bit easier to use, and it has the same instruction set, or more or less the same instruction set as the C80, which is also not so easy to use. And quite often we used these 8155 chips. This is an I/O chip and has some other stuff, and it can be connected quite easily to the 8085. And with these two chips and a few in between, we can build a computer from the 80s. This is such a board from the 80s. By the way, the PCB was done by myself. You see here, it was all manual work. And here you see the EEPROM, which of course is covered now, that no light can enter, because otherwise it would over time lose the content. Here the 8085, the 8155, and a few chips in between, power and the relay, which was necessary. But this is a minimal computer system of the 80s. And of course the quartz resonator. You see, these chips are really not expensive these days. It is 68 cents plus 95 cents shipping, and if you order more than one, I think the shipping stays the same here. It's really cheap to build these old computers. This is the 8155, also $1 and $1 shipping. And of course we will program it in assembler. So let me know if this is a good idea that I show how we did it in the 80s. The next one is from the 2019 years, because this is a Chinese NanoVNA, Vector Network Analyzer. Some of you might remember that I showed this device here to do the same thing. These two devices have a similar principle and also a similar purpose, but they are quite different. This one is a single port vector network analyzer. This one is a dual port. The single port can only measure S11, which is basically antennas. You plug an antenna here on the SMA connector, and then you see the return loss, or the SWR, shown here across the frequencies. This one not only shows the return loss, it also shows a Smith chart, which contains more information. This is the first difference. The second difference is it has two ports, so you can also measure S21, which is good for filters and amplifiers. And the third difference is it has a PC connection and a nice software on the PC to work much more productive. It also has a touch screen But the display itself has very small numbers, and also the touchscreen is not very good to work with. So I suggest to use this more in a fixed environment with the PC software. The last difference is here. The specification says 50 kHz to 300 MHz, or with the extended firmware also to 900 MHz. And these devices usually have the software already for 900 MHz, but from 300 to 900 MHz the performance is not as good as below 300 MHz. So we see here for low frequency, like a ham radio, this is a perfect fit here, and also for LoRa in Europe. It does not cover the LoRa in the United States, and it does not cover Wi-Fi. This one, on the other hand, only starts at 137 MHz, so the ham radio bands are not covered, but it goes up to 2.7 GHz, which covers also Wi-Fi. They are somehow different devices, and I also read that they are working on a version 2, which should also cover Wi-Fi later on. It should appear next spring or so. So if you are interested also in Wi-Fi, then you probably wait till next spring. Here is the listing. It is $45, $46 plus $1 shipping. But one thing I have to warn you, there are many clones around and nobody knows exactly which one is good and which one is bad. And I saw quite some complaints. So please test it when you get it immediately and do a dispute if it does not work properly. And one thing is also important. To calibrate this VNA and to test it, you need such a calibration kit. So you have to order one of those together with the VNA, otherwise you cannot create a complaint. And also you cannot use it, because if it's not calibrated, you do not know what it displays. An interesting tool is this one. Doesn't look very sophisticated, but is a really cool tool. Because I'm a fan of these zip ties here. And they are not so easy to handle if you want to have them tight. Like that. Here it's quite easy because everything is openly accessible. But with this device here, you go like that, and now you can really stretch as much as you want. You see it here. Here it has a grip. When you want, you press this lever here, tack, and now it's cut flush to the end, to the other end. Very, very simple tool, not too expensive. I use this all the time when I'm in projects like the ones with the antennas, for example, and I thought I show it to you. Maybe a few of you did not know that this exists. And the last one has also to do with tools and so on. You remember I did some videos about crimping and stuff like that. I got critics and I got help, and Jürgen here, he is a big help for me because he gave me a few tips. He is a professional in this area, and he gave me a few tips, and also he sent me some material and a letter here. A professional needs professional contacts. Greetings, Jürgen. Very nice. Thank you, Jürgen. Now, what I have here is contacts, real professional contacts, and also empty shells. Now, they are not exactly compatible with the ones we have from China. They are a little bit bigger. But Jürgen had even a better idea. And this was the first idea of Jürgen. This is a professional tool, and the official price is about $850 $50 or something. So it's incredibly expensive, but unfortunately from time to time you can buy one on eBay. And this one costed me less than $50. They are professional crimpers. They are made for this material, but they should also work for normal Chinese material. Now I have the material here, and Jürgen promised to me that he will give me also the instructions to use this. This is really very stable material here. This is all I wanted to show to you. Of course, it is only a selection and you might see other things appearing in later videos. Bye!